Welcome back, my tacticians, and what do you know? Pokemon Worlds 2017 has come to a conclusion. It was a while ago, but we have our champion, our new champion of the Masters Division for VGC, and it is Ryota Otsubo of Japan. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. And I'm going to be looking at this team entirely because while some of these Pokemon were more common on, some of these teams, this team in particular had some surprising picks and some surprising strategies that a lot of the top 8 players didn't actually think about or bring into the competition. And while you may see a few really common Pokemon on there, like say Taboo Coco, who is pretty much on every single team, with exception to Sam Pandelis from Australia, the runner-up, there were actually some surprising Pokemon that, while very common in VGC, for example, Alolan Marowak, Celesteela, and Taboo Coco, there were some surprising Pokemon and some surprising strategies that I don't think anyone really thought about going into VGC. And that is what makes this team really powerful. And I'm going to be analyzing this team, so let's start off with Taboo Finis. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the EVs or IV spread or whatever those are, whatever people might be thinking of. I don't know exactly the details of what the IVs are, so I won't be putting any EVs or so on into this video. Instead, I'm going to be looking at the strategy and the tactics behind what this team is supposed to do and how it was able to work so well where other teams might have failed. So we're going to be starting off with Taboo Finis here. So Taboo Finis, where the Taboo Finis that made it to the top of Worlds, so this one ran a Modest Nature and ran the choice specs with Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Muddy Water, and Ice Beam. Now, it's confusing to me because why would you need to run both Dazzling Gleam and Moonblast if you're going to run a choice specs Pokemon? The reason why I think this Taboo Finis ran both Dazzling Gleam and Moonblast is so that it can focus all of its energy into either powering down one move or powering down both Pokemon using Dazzling Gleam. Moonblast if you're focusing down a single Pokemon, because Moonblast has a base power of 95, whereas Dazzling Gleam only has a base power of 80. So that's where I think, if the opponent is trying to, deal damage to both the opposing Pokemon and try to either break Focus Sasers or just basically deal as much damage as possible, he's going to go for the Dazzling Gleam. However, if he needs to power down a single Pokemon or deal as much damage as possible, that is where the Moonblast comes into play. And of course, he has the Muddy Water for the stab damage, and so he doesn't knock out his own or damage his own Pokemon, which I'm surprised he didn't run Surf, because that would have been a really powerful move considering how many of his Pokemon have the move Protect. So he also had Ice Beam, which was also very surprising. Most Taboo Finis weren't running Ice Beam, and that actually catches people off guard, especially for those running such as Pokemon like, say, Garchomp, for example, or something like that. Or even Salamence, I believe. I believe Salamence was allowed into the Cup, or allowed into VGCs because it was part of the Dex or so. And Ice Beam really would have caught people off guard, especially for Salamences trained to resist Moonblasts and Dazzling Gleams, but not trained to resist Ice Beam. So that was Taboo Finis. We're moving on now to Krookodile, one of the few Krookodile that actually made it to the top 8. In fact, I think it was the only Pokemon the only Krookodile on the team. Yeah, the only team that ran Krookodile that made it to the top 8. I don't know if I remember exactly that's how it went, but it ran a Groundium Z Crystal, and it had the Intimidate ability with Earthquake, Crunch, Taunt, Protect, and had an Adamant Nature, I believe. Yeah, it ran an Adamant Nature. Well, there's not much to say about this Krookodile. It's going to intimidate the opponent. It's going to weaken any Pokemon that run their physical attacks, and it's going to obviously use that Groundium Z move to deal high burst damage against Pokemon that would either be very weak to, or at least try to do as much damage as possible with the Groundium Z Crystal. And obviously it has Taunt to deal with Pokemon that are trying to prankster or trying to set up, for example. You'll see two Pokemon later on like everyone fears the Celesteela that sets up the Leech Seed that goes with the Protect. That's what the taunt is for, people. That is why this Krookodile ran taunt. And obviously it has Protect to protect itself against, other attacks and so on. Now, the real surprise factor that I found on this team that I didn't even think about until I looked at that move was the Normalium Z crystal user Whimsicott. I don't know why I say Whimsicott. The Whimsicott on the team that ran Prankster, Normalium Z moves, and the Natural Gift with Tailwind, Charm, and Protect. That actually caught me off guard. So going back over to here, it ran Nature Power. Actually, not Natural Gift, Nature Power. I don't know why I'm thinking Natural Gift probably put that two in. But Nature's Power, because depending on the terrain, I'm trying not to tongue twist myself, but depending on the terrain, it will become a different type depending on the terrain. So in this case, this team has two terrain setters, Taboo Finis and Taboo Coco. It can either run a fairy move such as Moonblast, depending on if the Taboo Finis hits the field and the misty terrain stays up, it will become Moonblast. And if it's electric terrain, it becomes Thunderbolt. And if you power it up with Normalium Z, it becomes the same typing crystal as whatever terrain is on the field. So if misty terrain is on the field, it becomes the Fairyum Z move. If it's electric terrain, it becomes the electric terrain move, or it becomes the Electrium Z move. That is what makes this Whimsicott so very powerful. And obviously, it has the Tailwind to set up his team for make sure he outspeeds his opponent as much as possible. He also ran Charm to deal with physical attackers even more than Krookodile can. And he obviously has Protect. The reason why I don't think he ran both these two at the same time, Krookodile and Whimsicott, is because they're both designed to either intimidate or weaken the opponent's physical attacks as much as possible, as well as both of them having a Z crystal. You can't run two Z crystals in the same move or in the same turn or in the same battle actually. So you have one or the other, and that's what I'm thinking he was doing with this Whimsicott. But either way, it was very powerful. It was very surprising. I didn't even think of Normalium Z into Nature Power until, just now. And he has Alolan Marowak. Well, what hasn't been said about Alolan Marowak? Thick Club, Adamant Nature, all that firepower. However, where most people would run Earthquake with Alolan Marowak, he ran Brick Break. That is what actually surprised me. So I'm thinking, why would he run Brick Break on Alolan Marowak? Now it is true, it would deal with some normal type Pokemon easily. However, this Brick Break can break through screens, so it can break through things such as the Aurora Veil, it can break through reflect barriers, it can break through light screens. That is what I think this Alolan Marowak was designed to counter. Designed to counter the power that is the Aurora Veil. It's a very powerful defensive boost. It's basically a light screen and a reflect in one move, and it actually stacks. I believe it does stack with reflect and light screen. So that is what this Alolan Marowak is designed to do. Break through the Aurora Veils, break them down so that the opponent can't make use of them. And obviously it has, Flare Blitz and Shadow Bone for massive burst damage and stab damage, and Protect to protect itself with the Lightning Rod so that it, doesn't take any damage from Taboo Coco later on. And, well, it's Celesteela, people. What hasn't been said about Celesteela? Careful Nature, Leftovers, Leech Seed, Heavy Slam, Flamethrower, Protect. Enough said. It's the Celesteela that everyone hates, everyone fears. But you know what? It made it to the top 8. It became the champion. You can't deny it. Now, moving on down to Taboo Coco. Obviously, Taboo Coco has been one of the more staple Pokemons of the VGC 2017 season. It has Life Orb, Electric Surge to set up the electric terrain. It has Thunderbolt for the stab damage. It has Dazzling Gleam for fairy stab damage. It has discharge for electrical stab damage, as well as to, just deal even more damage. And obviously protect. So, this Taboo Coco, though, this is what got me surprising. Most people would run a timid-natured Taboo Coco. He ran modest-natured Taboo Coco. So he was going for pure damage. And when you have the Whimsicott, you don't need that extra speed, because you're going to get it from the Tailwind. That's why he ran such powerful offensive move. That's why he ran a modest-natured Taboo Finis. That's why he ran an adamant-natured Krookodile. That's why he ran a careful-natured Alolan Marowak, though. I think he was trying to protect himself better. Balance out the defenses, and he doesn't need the extra damage from like an adamant nature. He's got it with the thick club. So he needs that extra defensive boost, that's why. He's got the modest-natured Whimsicott as well. He's got a careful-natured Celesteela. He doesn't need the extra speed. He just needed the extra firepower. With the Whimsicott acting as like the team's support Pokemon to basically set him up. He doesn't need the extra speed from like a timid nature or a jolly nature. He needed the extra firepower. And that is where these other Pokemon come in. That is where they come in. That is what they're supposed to do. Celesteela is meant to tank and endure damage. It's meant to slowly whittle the opponent down with heavy slams, flamethrowers, and leech seeds, as well as stall the opponent down and buy him time to deal with bigger threats. He's using the Alolan Marowak's thick club, and I'm guessing max attack EVs perhaps, to deal as much heavy damage as possible, as well as use the Brick Break to get KOs where you wouldn't normally get them, or to break through Aurora Veil and other screens. He's using the Whimsicott to deal massive burst damage with the terrains, as well as set him up. He's using Krookodile to, again, massive ground burst damage. Deal with and intimidate the opponent. Taunt opposing Celesteelas. Keep them from setting up Leech Seeds and Protects. Use Taboo Finis, Choice Specs to, again, massive burst damage. And finally, of course, Life Orb Taboo Coco, massive burst damage. So, that is what I'm loving about this team. Even though I may not like a few of the members, in particular the Celesteela, I just don't like stalling Pokemon in general. But the fact that he was able to cohesively take all these different Pokemon that have various different playstyles and yet form them into a really powerful team with a clear strategy in mind that can adapt to the field as it shapes around him and against him, that is what makes this team so powerful. It is adaptive. It can handle a lot of different scenarios. It doesn't care about opposing terrains because it can adapt to the terrain. That is what I love about this team. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown and theory crafting about how this team was able to work together. And I hope you all enjoy future videos of mine, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
I'm taking in what I can get, but I can't find the answers yet. Head underwater, slow my mind. I hold my breath until I'm found.